Chapter 23, Back on Earth. Now, in the state that I'm in, knowing what had occurred during and before this experience happened to me about reviewing my life, I knew and remembered these things now, which stopped my fear. Magic and Drew, Carl, along with his new girlfriend Sharon, and Carl's children were steadily working on their survival because things had changed back there drastically. Before we got back, the presidency and the country were taken over by left liberal Democrats. Our crew, our teammates, they knew what had happened to us. They knew what happened to us and what we would do according to what they knew from our last transmission that they did capture, and from what they were able to witness and track in alternative manners. They had not given up on us, and logically they knew what our steps would be, and they even calculated the amount of time it would take us to get back home for 2 different scenarios. They calculated where we went and what we might be experiencing, all according to our trajectory. They knew how long they would have to wait for our return if nothing went wrong, and if what they believed our untested technology could possibly accomplish theoretically. They were able to witness us jump by hacking in on Mount Palomar's telescope, which at the time happened to be looking at the constellation of Lyra. We were in direct line with it. They kept busy while waiting for us because the weather during 2013 started to go haywire, and it kept repeating a pattern every year after a greater devastation. This is when they started chemtrailing heavily. They actually created weather warfare for their own reasons, and it was all about control. It was about money that they could steal. The politicians had grown corrupt, but during the 4 years after 2016, the Republicans followed our Constitution, and we thrived. In 2020, the Democrats took over again and ruined everything. They, along with the 1%ers, along with the Silicon Valley types, all together with the mainstream media, kept throwing distractions one after another, which started back in 2013 or even before, during Obama's era. But basically they were distracting and dividing us in many ways. They had forgotten about morality, which the nation was built upon, Christian values, the right things to do for the people, and there was a lot of rules for thee and not for me kind of a thing going on. But it was the distractions one after the other of their corruption, and they kept lying directly into the people's faces. In 2020, they actually did steal the election, and they actually brought our country to its knees. People, most of them were brainwashed by now because they kept beating this narrative into everybody's head for over 15 years. And during the Republicans' reign from 2016 to 2020, even then, it was a sad state of affairs, and they were all being controlled by the evil, fallen entities. They had no clue. They were even so corrupt, along with many of the people who were deceived, believing that abortion was birth control. And this all goes back to Revelation, where it describes that first horseman, which I believe started in about 2022. He brings starvation, famine, pestilence, and he comes carrying a bow. What does the bow represent in the Bible? The rainbow. So, what do the LBGT community wave a flag about? The rainbow. It was so obvious, most couldn't see it, and it brought us to a point where when they manipulated the weather, it actually heated things up, and that's when things got really crazy. In essence, if you know anything about geology, the Earth has a way of fixing itself naturally. And there's a lot of factors going on, like precession, which means wobble, which causes the north and south poles to shift slightly or wander. And basically, we were all duped into believing global warming and climate change. They kept changing definitions of everything. Didn't make any sense. The climate and the carbon and the CO2 in the air, the amount that humans produce or animals was minimal. We had over 26 active volcanoes at that time. We had forest fires everywhere around the planet, dumping unbelievable amounts of carbon and CO2 along with carbon monoxide into the air, all because of the chemical spraying of the one main factor that caused that would be the aluminum oxide they were putting in the air. If they wanted to do anything, all they had to do was spread volcanic ash in the air, which would have been natural. But pictures from the 1900s till just recently proves that the ocean has not risen. They have been lying to us for years, and even we bought into it. It was about taking money for that and putting it wherever they could to hide it and basically not do anything. If they wanted to stop the weird climate changes, all they had to do was stop spraying our skies. And the bottom line is, the United States had the most stringent anti-pollution laws on the planet. So it wasn't about that. Again, it was about control, which was brought on by the Democrats. It started in 2013, and it started in Ukraine. And it was during Obama's administration, along with his vice president, Joe Biden. They are the ones that started a coup which got Russia involved years later. Earth's geology and its weather started to get stranger and more severe. Then all of a sudden, around 2017, there was a calm in activity. It would be the last calm year, almost normal. This put everyone at ease, and that would be a warning for the next several years to come. It was the calm before the storm. The world was becoming more unstable in 2021, and then wars started breaking out all over the world. I already had this in my memory now as I watched this unfolding, and it all started to make sense. I realized what the Large Hadron Collider and CERN had done, and not only did they prove magic was right about light travel, which they proved on the atomic level, but the end result of their efforts were releasing some of those entities that God had chained in the earth. They had unlocked portals. Even the elect were deceived. The smartest of men on the planet had mocked the God of Christianity, but also the Hindus' beliefs with the way they mocked their god of destruction, Shiva, which they also inadvertently released. It was all in our archives on Earth at the base. During this time, our crew members were in the process of moving all of the tools and equipment to Drew's dad's home in New Mexico. Drew inherited his father's land and house that they had built when he was still a child. And being a survivalist encampment, it was well supplied. They could live there without worry for 10 years once they set up there. Drew's father, also a hard rock miner, was looking for gems and metals on the backside of the property in a mesa. He extensively tunneled into that mesa there, which gave them a head start on hiding. At this point, that was the key to survival, because a lot of people, millions, closer to billions, were dying of starvation because of the world government and the pandemics that they had released. Not only that, but the proxy wars they started in Ukraine and Taiwan was going to lead to major destruction, also written about in the end times revelation. Magic kept a journal of sorts to bring us up to speed when we returned on his computers and all the news that they archived. So we learned later, which is actually now, and I was drawing a parallel with this part of my life. I knew this, and in this darkness brought to my mind the memory of what happened and where I was now. Very strange, I thought to myself, that on this side I can see clearly now. There were many reasons why they moved, and it wasn't the rising sea levels, at least not yet. The corrupt politics, strange mass deaths of people and animals and fish. The land Drew inherited was precisely in the right place at the right time to survive and remain concealed, and it provided superior protection. It was about the new technology they had figured out with what we started. They had run out of time to continue building another complete craft in Florida, and they got tired of the hurricanes that hit Florida, and there were 3 of them in 1 year, and for those reasons they moved. They filed the patents, but even with the patents filed, no one would believe that electromagnetic drive worked, nor would anyone invest for what most believed was pseudoscience. So that faded away and was forgotten again. Without a demonstration at that time in Florida, it was hopeless. They knew it, and so did we back during the time when we built the can. Bob would still invest and move with them, but even he was running out of funds. They would continue on with building anyway until we returned. And then there were other events that were political and environmental that made them realize that they would need to stay underground till things changed. But they never changed for the better. It never happened, and things only grew stranger. We would learn so much more why they stayed underground literally, but not till later. And the alien thing was revealed as being true. The alien agenda was already in place, and it all comes along with every other paranormal event from the dark side. In other words, everything from Bigfoot to UFOs to strange creatures appearing out of nowhere that had been extinct, where everything was showing itself came from the dark side. It wasn't long, and I had to go back and review some more of my life again, the important stuff. And there was a reason behind it that I didn't know yet. Next, Chapter 24, Things to Consider.